The sun was slowly setting over the wide American frontier, painting the sky in warm shades of orange and gold. The air carried the scent of dry grass and distant cedar trees. In the middle of this open land stood a small wooden cabin, humble and weathered by years of strong winds and harsh seasons. This cabin belonged to Mary Collins, a young pregnant settler who had faced more hardship in 1 year than some people experienced in a lifetime. Mary was a gentle woman, with soft brown hair usually tied in a simple braid, and eyes filled with quiet strength. She had come to this land with her husband, Samuel, dreaming of a small, peaceful life where they could raise their daughter. They had planned to expand their farm, grow a garden, and build a life that would one day belong to their children. But dreams often change, and life sometimes takes unpredictable turns. Months earlier, Mary's husband had passed away from illness, leaving her to manage everything alone while carrying another child. Each morning, Mary woke up before the sun. Even though her body felt heavier with her pregnancy, she prepared breakfast for her daughter, Emily, an 8-year-old girl filled with curiosity and sweetness. Emily tried to help her mother as much as she could, sweeping the floor, gathering small sticks for the fire, and arranging the few dishes they owned. She was a child, but she understood that her mother needed her help, and she did everything with a loving heart. Mary would often smile at Emily, even when she was tired. She never wanted her daughter to feel afraid or uncertain about their future. She wanted Emily to grow up believing that strength could come from calmness and courage could exist without anger. That particular day started like any other. Mary stepped outside the cabin, touching her belly gently as the baby moved. The wind brushed across her cheeks. She looked around the land that stretched endlessly, rolling fields, quiet hills, and tall grasses that swayed like ocean waves. Even though the place could be lonely at times, Mary found comfort in the openness. She believed that if she remained brave, life would guide her forward. Emily came running out of the cabin with her little wooden doll in hand. "Mama, look, I fixed her dress," she said proudly. Mary leaned down slowly, her belly making her movement careful. She brushed a strand of hair from Emily's face. "It's beautiful," she said warmly. "Just like you." The two shared a heartfelt smile, and for a moment, everything felt peaceful. But peace on the frontier could be delicate like a small flame that needed protection from every passing wind. Later that afternoon, as Mary was tending to the small vegetable garden her husband had planted, she noticed the sound of horses in the distance. At first, she thought it might be travelers or hunters passing through. The land often brought strangers, but most people came with honest intentions or simply moved along without stopping. However, the sound grew closer, too close. Something felt off. Mary stood slowly, brushing dirt from her apron. She took Emily's hand and guided her toward the cabin. The young girl sensed her mother's change in mood and stayed silent, looking up with wide, worried eyes. Before Mary could close the door behind them, 3 rough-looking men rode into view. They weren't familiar faces. Their clothes were dusty, their expressions tense, and their horses restless. Something about them made the air feel heavier. Emily held tightly to her mother's skirt. Mary kept her voice steady, even though her heartbeat quickened. "Good afternoon. How can I help you?" she asked politely. The man in front, who looked like the leader, pulled his horse to a stop and looked at Mary with a cold, impatient stare. "We're looking for Samuel Collins," he said. The mention of her husband's name felt like a small stab of sadness. Mary took a slow breath. "My husband passed away months ago," she replied softly. The men exchanged glances, their expressions growing darker, not in a violent way, but in a frustrated, dissatisfied way. They clearly didn't like the answer. The leader dismounted and walked closer. "He owed us supplies," the man said firmly. "We came to collect." Mary held her composure. "I'm sorry. But if he promised you something, I don't know about it. And even if I did, I have very little to give. I'm caring for my daughter and preparing for another child." The man frowned, his jaw tightening. "That's not our problem," he said. Emily clung tighter to Mary's hand, sensing danger. Mary gently squeezed her daughter's fingers, trying to reassure her without speaking. Mary tried to stay calm. "I understand you're upset," she said. "But please, I'm alone with my child. I can offer you food or water, but I cannot give more than that. The second outlaw shook his head angrily. We didn't ride all the way here for scraps, he muttered. Mary felt fear slowly rising inside her, but she didn't allow it to show. She kept her shoulders straight, her voice steady. I'm asking you to leave us in peace, she said. We mean no harm to anyone. For a moment, the men hesitated, uncertain. Perhaps they expected an argument, or a man to confront them. Instead, they found a pregnant woman showing quiet bravery, which threw them off balance. But frustration made people act recklessly. Mary watched their movements carefully, her heart beat like a drum. She couldn't allow anything to happen to Emily or her unborn child. She needed to stay calm, to protect them both with her presence and her words. The leader pointed toward the cabin. You're hiding something, he accused. Your husband must have left something behind. We'll find it. Mary shook her head firmly. There's nothing here worth searching for. Please, don't frighten my daughter. Emily's small voice trembled as she whispered, Mama? Mary gently pulled her close. It's all right, sweetheart, she murmured, keeping her tone warm to soothe the girl. But the men were growing impatient. Mary stepped slightly in front of Emily, shielding her. We have nothing of value, she repeated. If you force your way in, you'll only waste your time. One man moved toward the door. Mary stepped forward quickly, not aggressively, but with dignity. Please, she said, her eyes meeting his. Show some mercy. My husband is gone. I am doing everything I can just to keep my daughter safe. Her calmness made the moment strangely intense. The outlaws weren't expecting peace. They were expecting fear or anger. Her strength confused them, and confusion made them hesitate. The sky had grown dim by now, clouds drifting across the sun and casting long shadows over the prairie. The cold evening wind began to sweep across the land, lifting dust around their boots and making the situation feel even more tense. Emily buried her face against Mary's dress. The leader clicked his tongue and turned back to the horses, frustrated but unsure of what to do next. This is a waste of time, he muttered to his companions. There's nothing here anyway. Mary took a slow breath, trying to steady her nerves. Thank you, she said gently. You won't gain anything by troubling us. For a moment, it seemed like the men might leave, but the air remained tight with uncertainty. Mary kept her eyes on them, ready to shield Emily from any sudden movement. She felt her heartbeat in her throat. The land grew silent. Not even a bird chirped. Then, from very far away, a faint sound began to rise, the rhythmic echo of horse hooves, steady and confident. The outlaws heard it too and turned their heads. The distant figure on horseback was moving closer, faster, cutting across the open plains like a shadow against the fading light. Mary held her daughter tightly, unsure whether this new arrival meant hope or more danger. The outlaws straightened up, exchanging uneasy glances. Emily looked up at her mother with wide, fearful eyes. Mama, who's coming? She whispered. Mary didn't know, but somewhere deep inside her heart, she hoped, truly hoped, that help was on its way. The sound of horse hooves grew louder with every passing second, echoing across the wide plains like a steady drumbeat. The earlier breeze now carried a new tension with it, as if the land itself was holding its breath. Mary stood in front of her daughter, one protective arm gently around Emily's shoulders, her eyes fixed on the far horizon where the rider approached. The three outlaws shifted uneasily. They had come expecting an easy moment to pressure a lone woman, not a surprise visitor who could challenge their intentions. The leader narrowed his eyes, trying to make out who was coming toward them. Who could that be? One of the men muttered. Mary said nothing. She kept Emily close, her heart beating fast, her mind praying for safety. She didn't know who the rider was. He could be a traveler, a rancher, or someone from a nearby tribe, but something in the way he rode straight, steady, and sure gave her a strange sense of hope that she hadn't felt moments earlier. As the rider drew nearer, the outlaws grew more nervous. The leader of the group stepped forward, his hand resting on his belt, not in a threatening gesture, but in a wary, protective one. He clearly didn't want trouble, at least not with someone he didn't know. Mary watched the figure carefully. He was riding a strong horse, its mane flowing in the wind, its hooves striking the ground in powerful strides. The rider sat tall and balanced, his long dark hair blowing behind him. He wore traditional Comanche clothing, simple but sturdy, made for long travel and unpredictable weather. 2 long braids hung over his shoulders, decorated with small beads that glimmered in the evening light. As he drew close, Mary could finally see his face. It was calm but alert, with sharp eyes that seemed to notice every detail of the scene at once. The outlaws, the frightened woman, the little girl holding on to her mother. The tension in the air, his presence alone felt steadying, like the calm before a storm but without the threat of thunder. His name was Dakota, a Comanche warrior known among his people for his fairness, his quiet wisdom, and his courage. He had been traveling near the borders of Comanche land to check on the horses of his tribe and gather herbs for his people. He wasn't planning to stop near settler homes, but from the distance he had noticed movement that didn't look peaceful. Something about the scene had made his instincts tighten. His people believed deeply in protecting the innocent, no matter who they were, so he rode closer, guided by that sense of responsibility. The outlaws didn't know who he was, but they could sense his confidence. One of them whispered to the leader, "Maybe we should go." Einsa. Cease too. Carady. The leader shot him an annoyed look. "We leave when I say we leave." But the uncertainty in his voice told Mary all she needed to know. They were worried. Dakota brought his horse to a calm stop a few feet away from the scene. He didn't speak immediately. He simply observed, his eyes moving slowly from the outlaws to the frightened mother and child. Emily hid slightly behind her mother but peeked out curiously. Sensing something gentle in this stranger's presence, Mary felt her breath steady a little. Something about Dakota made her feel safer, though she couldn't understand why. He carried no angry expression, no rushed gestures. Instead, there was a quiet strength in him, like someone who was confident enough not to show fear. Finally, Dakota spoke, his voice deep but calm. "What is happening here?" he asked evenly. The leader tried to sound confident. "This is none of your business," he said. "We just came to collect what's ours." Dakota's gaze remained calm. "This woman is alone with her child," he said. "You should not trouble her." Mary's heart skipped. He had seen everything in a single glance. The outlaws exchanged uncomfortable looks. The second man cleared his throat. "We're not troublemakers. Her husband owed us something, that's all." Dakota looked at Mary, offering her a chance to speak. She appreciated the respect in his eyes. "My husband is gone," Mary explained softly, "and I have nothing left to give them. I only want peace for my daughter." Dakota nodded, then turned back to the men. "You have heard her," he said. "There is nothing here for you." The leader took a step forward, annoyed at being challenged. "She's lying," he insisted. "She must have something." Dakota gently slid off his horse, landing lightly on the dry ground. Even without raising his voice or showing anger, his presence seemed to grow stronger. "Leave her in peace," he said. "This land is wide. There is no need to trouble a mother and her child." Mary felt Emily squeeze her hand in relief. She admired how Dakota stood, not in aggression, but in quiet confidence. He didn't reach for anything, didn't try to intimidate, didn't even step forward. His calmness alone made the outlaws uneasy. The leader frowned, trying to hold on to his authority. "And if we don't?" Dakota didn't move an inch. "You will," he said simply. "Because this is not right." There was no threat in his voice, only truth. Sometimes truth was more powerful than any force. The outlaws realized they were outmatched. Not in number or weapon, but in spirit. The leader clicked his tongue again, irritated by the change of events. "This isn't worth it," he finally muttered. "Let's go." The other men nodded quickly, relieved to leave without further tension. They mounted their horses, still grumbling, and rode away across the open land until their figures became small shadows in the distance. Mary let out a breath she didn't realize she had been holding. Emily, sensing the danger had passed, hugged her mother tightly. Mary placed a gentle hand on her daughter's back. Dakota watched the outlaws leave, making sure they went far enough. Then he turned to Mary and Emily with a soft expression, the sharp tension of moments earlier fading from his face. "Are you both all right?" he asked kindly. Mary nodded slowly. Thanks to you, she said. You arrived just when we needed help. Dakota lowered his head slightly, a sign of respect. I am glad I was near, he replied. The land felt troubled, so I followed the feeling. Emily peeked up at him shyly. Are you a warrior? She asked with innocent curiosity. Dakota smiled gently, the corners of his mouth lifting in a warm, calm way. I protect my people, he said, and anyone who needs help. Emily's eyes brightened. She had never met anyone like him before. There was something peaceful yet strong about him. Something that made her feel safe even though they were strangers. Mary placed a hand on her belly, feeling her baby move again. Her body was still shaky from the fear she had just experienced, but Dakota's presence brought comfort. You saved our lives, she said, her voice filled with gratitude. I don't know how to thank you. Dakota shook his head gently. You owe me nothing. I did what any person with a good heart should do, but Mary knew that wasn't true. Not everyone would ride into a situation like that, not when they had no obligation, no connection, no promise to fulfill. Dakota had chosen to be brave simply because it was right. Dakota looked toward the horizon where the outlaws had disappeared. They may return, he said thoughtfully. People like them do not easily give up. I will stay nearby for a few days to make sure you remain safe. Mary blinked in surprise. You would do that for us? Redding. Yes, he answered simply. You should not face danger alone. Emily smiled softly. Will you stay with us tonight? She asked. Dakota paused respectfully before answering. I will stay close, he said. But outside, I do not wish to cause discomfort. Mary knew he meant no harm. She felt sincerity in every word he spoke. You helped us when no one else could, she said. You are welcome to rest here if you want. Dakota appreciated the offer but remained thoughtful. I will keep watch nearby, he said. It is enough. With that, he gently guided his horse toward a clearing not far from the cabin, where he could keep an eye on the home without invading their space. As he walked away, Emily whispered to her mother, He's kind, Mama. I'm not scared anymore. Mary looked at Dakota's figure moving through the tall grass, the fading sunlight outlining him in a warm glow. I'm not scared either, she whispered back. For the first time in months, Mary felt something she had almost forgotten: hope. The night after the outlaws left was strangely quiet. The sky was deep and dark, filled with stars that looked like tiny silver dots scattered across black velvet. Mary had trouble sleeping. Every time she closed her eyes, she remembered the fear she had felt earlier that day. But then she also thought of Dakota, how he had arrived calmly, how he had spoken with steady strength, how he had protected her and Emily without hesitation. Emily slept beside her mother, curled up like a small kitten, holding her wooden doll close. Mary gently smoothed her daughter's hair and whispered a soft prayer of gratitude. Outside, she could hear the faint movement of Dakota's horse and the quiet melody of the wind brushing across the grass. Knowing he was nearby made her feel safer than she had felt in a very long time. Morning came slowly. Pale sunlight spilled across the plains, giving everything a gentle glow. Mary stepped out of the cabin carefully, one hand on her belly, the other shielding her eyes from the light. She looked toward the tree line and saw Dakota sitting by a small fire, preparing something in a small clay pot. Emily came running out behind her, rubbing her sleepy eyes. Mama, is he still here? Mary smiled softly. Yes, sweetheart. He stayed to watch over us. Emily grinned, her fear replaced by curiosity. She skipped toward Dakota with childlike energy. But Mary called out gently, reminding her to be polite. Dakota looked up as they approached. His face held its usual calm expression, but his eyes warmed when he saw Emily. She waved, shyly. Good morning, she said. Good morning, Dakota replied with a gentle smile. I made tea from the herbs I gathered. It helps give strength. Mary thanked him and accepted the warm cup. She sat beside the small fire, feeling its heat chase away the cool morning breeze. Dakota sat across from her, respectful and quiet, giving her space to relax. For a few minutes, none of them spoke. They simply watched the sunlight rise and spread across the plains. Emily sat between them, dipping her biscuit into the tea and humming softly. Finally, Mary looked at Dakota with sincere gratitude. "I want to thank you again," she said. "Not just for yesterday, but for staying through the night. I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't been here." Dakota nodded slightly. "You do not need to thank me. I only did what was right." Mary smiled gently. "Sometimes doing the right thing still takes courage." Dakota didn't respond immediately, but a soft expression passed through his eyes. He stirred the fire with a long stick, thinking deeply. After breakfast, Dakota offered to help repair some parts of the cabin. Mary hesitated, not wanting to burden him. But he simply said, "It is no burden to help those who need it," and she knew he meant it. He began by checking the wooden boards along the cabin walls. Some were loose, others cracked from weather and time. Mary watched him work from the doorway. Her eyes filled with respect. He moved with quiet confidence, every movement, steady, thoughtful, and purposeful. Emily watched him too, fascinated by how skilled he was with tools and how calmly he worked. "Mama," Emily whispered, "he fixes everything so fast." "Yes," Mary whispered back with a small smile. "He is very capable." Dakota didn't rush. He took his time and explained things to Emily whenever she asked questions. He showed her how to identify strong wood, how to tie a rope properly, and how to choose stones for building small steps. Emily listened with bright, eager eyes. She enjoyed learning from him because he spoke to her with patience, never treating her as too young or too small to understand. Later that afternoon, Dakota noticed that Mary was struggling to carry water from the well. Her pregnancy made simple tasks more tiring. Without saying a word, he walked over and gently took the heavy bucket from her hands. "You should rest," he said kindly. Mary blushed slightly, unused to receiving help. "I'm used to doing things alone," she admitted. Dakota held the bucket easily. "You do not have to do everything alone," he said. "Even the strongest people need help sometimes." His words touched her deeply. For months she had faced everything by herself. She had fought storms, loneliness, and fear without anyone to lean on. Hearing those words made her heart soften, and she felt a warmth inside her chest she hadn't felt in a long time. That evening, they all sat outside as the sky turned pink and purple. Emily played nearby, making shapes in the dirt with a stick. Mary and Dakota sat on old wooden chairs just outside the cabin door. "The land is beautiful," Mary said softly, looking into the distance. "But it can be lonely too." Dakota nodded. "Loneliness is a heavy thing," he said. "It makes the days long and the nights longer." Mary looked at him curiously. "You speak like someone who understands." Dakota gave a small smile. "I travel often. Sometimes I am far from my people for weeks. Even though I love the land, silence can sometimes be heavier than a storm." Mary felt a quiet connection forming between them. His words were simple, but they carried deep meaning. She understood loneliness too well. It had been her shadow ever since Samuel passed away. Emily soon came running toward them, holding something in her hands. "Look, I found a feather," she said excitedly. Dakota examined it gently. "It is from a hawk," he said, "a strong bird that sees far." Emily's eyes widened. "Can I keep it?" Dakota nodded. "Yes, it is a good sign." Emily carefully tucked the feather into her dress pocket and skipped away again. Mary watched her daughter happily and felt something inside her heart release a feeling of relief that Emily was smiling again. The past months had been hard on the little girl too. As the days passed, Dakota continued to stay close by, making sure the outlaws didn't return. He didn't camp too near the cabin, always respectful of Mary's space, but he came each morning to help with chores. He brought fresh berries, herbs, and sometimes small fish he caught from the river. He fixed the roof, strengthened the fence, and even made a small wooden swing for Emily on a sturdy tree branch. Emily adored him more with each passing day. She followed him everywhere, asking endless questions about animals, stars, and plants. Dakota answered each one with patience and kindness. He taught her how to listen to the wind, how to read the ground, how to approach nature with respect. Mary watched them sometimes from the doorway. The sight warmed her heart. Emily had been lonely without a father figure, and seeing her bond with Dakota filled Mary with gratitude. Mary and Dakota began to talk more as well. She told him stories of her life before coming to the frontier, how she loved baking with her mother, how she used to play near the old river as a child, how she dreamed of raising her children in a peaceful home. Dakota shared stories too of his tribe, of the traditions he grew up with, of the values his elders taught him. He spoke about kindness, respect for the land, gratitude for food, and the importance of community. Mary listened with fascination. She realized how different their worlds were, yet how similar their hearts felt in many ways. One afternoon, as Dakota repaired a corner of the cabin, Mary brought him a cup of cool water. He accepted it with gratitude. Their fingers brushed for just a moment, but it was enough for both of them to feel something warm and unexpected. Mary looked away shyly. "I don't know how we'll ever repay you," she said softly. Dakota shook his head. "You owe me nothing," he said. "Being here feels right." Mary looked up at him, surprised by the honesty in his voice. He continued, "When I saw you and your daughter, I felt a strong feeling inside. A feeling telling me to stay, to help, to protect. Sometimes the heart knows things before the mind understands." Mary felt her cheeks warm. She placed a hand on her belly as her baby kicked softly. "You have brought peace back to our home," she whispered. "I am grateful." Emily suddenly ran up to them with cheerful energy. "Dakota, come see the little rabbits I found." Dakota smiled and stood up. "Show me," he said warmly. Mary watched him follow Emily across the field. She felt a flutter in her chest, not from fear or worry, but from hope, and something else she wasn't ready to name yet. For the first time since she had lost her husband, Mary felt that life might still hold gentle surprises. She didn't know what the future would bring, but she knew one thing for certain: Dakota had become a light in their lonely world, and with every passing day, that light grew brighter. After the long journey away from the Outlaws, a new kind of life quietly began for Sarah, little Anna, and Tohan. The days were calmer now, but calm did not mean empty. Every sunrise brought a new test, a new responsibility, and a new chance for these three very different lives to grow together. At first, none of them fully understood how much change was coming. They only knew that they were safe from danger, and that safety itself felt like a gift. Sarah still carried many worries inside her, but she did not speak about them openly. She would sit near the small fire each morning, holding her hands on her belly, feeling the gentle kicks of her unborn child. She wondered what kind of world her baby would grow up in. She wondered if her child would fit between two cultures, or belong to only one. Most of all, she wondered if she herself was strong enough to raise children in such an unfamiliar environment. These thoughts would rise inside her like small waves, but she kept them steady. Tohain, on the other hand, moved through the camp with quiet confidence. He checked the horses, prepared the morning water, and made sure the camp stayed safe. He never spoke loudly and never made Sarah feel pressured or controlled. He understood that trust was something that took time, especially after all she had endured. Whenever he approached, he did so gently, giving Sarah enough space to breathe. This patience slowly began to ease her heart. Little Anna grew the quickest. Children often adapt faster than adults, and she was no different. She learned the names of the horses, the meaning of certain hand signals, and the playful shouts of the Comanche children who occasionally visited the outer parts of the camp. At first, she stayed close to her mother, but each passing day made her braver. She ran barefoot on the soft ground, laughed with other children, and even learned how to hold her balance on a small pony. Sometimes Sarah would watch her daughter and feel a quiet hope rise inside her. Maybe this place, which once felt strange, could truly become home. One late afternoon, a gentle wind moved through the tall grass, bringing a sense of peace. Tohane returned from a scouting trip with good news. A wider part of the valley had clean water, rich soil, and enough shelter from storms. He suggested moving there and building something more lasting, a real home, not just a temporary camp. Sarah listened carefully and nodded. The idea of settling in one place gave her comfort. She was tired of running. She was tired of fear. The thought of stability felt like a warm blanket. The next morning, They packed their small belongings and traveled slowly toward the valley Tohane had described. The land opened beautifully before them. There were tall trees for shade, a soft stream that whispered as it moved, and gentle slopes where wildflowers grew. Sarah felt something inside her loosen, as if a knot had finally been untied. She touched her daughter's hair and smiled as Anna ran ahead, excited to explore. Tohane began building a small but strong shelter. He shaped wooden beams with careful hands, making sure everything could stand against wind and rain. Sarah helped in her own ways, gathering reeds, smoothing the ground, and arranging their few belongings. Working together like this slowly built a quiet bond between them. They spoke more now. They shared stories, Sarah about her childhood, Tohane about his people's traditions. Little Anna often sat near them, listening with wide eyes, absorbing every detail. Days turned into weeks, and the valley became theirs. Sarah learned how to recognize different herbs and how to prepare simple remedies from them. Tohane taught her slowly, making sure she never felt rushed. She discovered that she enjoyed learning new skills. It made her feel independent, capable, and connected to the land in a peaceful way she had never known. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky in soft pink and gold, Sarah felt a familiar tightness in her belly. She held her breath and waited. Another tightness came. Stronger this time. She understood immediately her baby was ready to arrive. She called Tohane softly. He came quickly, his face calm but alert. They prepared a safe, warm space inside the shelter. Little Anna stayed close, her small hands folded nervously, but Sarah reassured her with a gentle smile. The hours were long, but they were filled with quiet strength. Tohane stayed by her side, steady and supportive. When the child was finally born, Sarah held the tiny baby in her arms and felt a deep wave of love spread through her. It was a boy, healthy and calm. His eyes blinked open slowly, as if trying to understand the world he had entered. Tears filled Sarah's eyes, not from fear, but from relief and gratitude. She whispered a soft prayer of thanks without thinking. The emotion was too powerful to hold back. Tohane looked at the child with a gentle pride, as if he instantly accepted him. Sarah could sense his sincerity. She felt her heart soften even more. They named the baby in both languages, a sign of two worlds joining peacefully. For the first time since she had lost her old life, Sarah felt complete. Not because her past had disappeared, but because she had finally found a place where she could grow again. Life continued. But now, with deeper meaning. Sarah's days were filled with caring for her baby boy, helping Anna with small lessons, and learning the rhythms of the valley. Tohane brought food, protected their home, and spent evenings with them around the fire. They talked, laughed softly, and shared moments that slowly shaped them into a real family. Nothing felt forced. Everything grew naturally, like the wildflowers blooming on the hillside. One afternoon, weeks after the baby's birth, Sarah walked to the top of a small rise near the valley. From there, she could see the open plains stretching far into the distance. She thought about the journey that had brought her here. The fear, the danger, the unexpected rescue, and the slow healing that followed. She felt the warm sun on her face and realized that she was no longer afraid of the future. She was not the frightened woman running from outlaws anymore. She was a mother of two, a survivor, and someone living with new strength. Tohane joined her on the hilltop. He didn't say anything at first. He simply stood beside her, sharing the quiet moment. Sarah looked at him and felt a gentle gratitude. Without him, her story might have ended the day danger found her. Instead, a new chapter had begun. She told him softly that she was thankful not just for the rescue, but for everything that had come after. The patience, the kindness, the safety, and the family they had built together. Tohane listened respectfully, then nodded with modest warmth. As the sun set, the valley glowed with peaceful colors. Sarah held her baby close, while Anna picked a handful of wildflowers nearby. Tohane stood with them, his presence steady and reassuring. For the first time in a long while, Sarah felt she truly belonged somewhere. She knew life would still have challenges, but she also knew she would not face them alone. Their new life had not been planned. It had grown from danger, courage, rescue, and trust. But in the soft lights of that evening, surrounded by the quiet strength of the land and the warmth of the family standing beside her, Sarah realized something important. Sometimes life does not follow the path we expect, yet it still leads us exactly where we are meant to be. And with that understanding, she stepped forward into her future, hopeful, peaceful, and stronger than she had ever been before.